Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand. It's the Manchester Derby preview. Weghorst has arrived in Manchester in the last hour this Thursday evening. He's arrived in Manchester. Fully expect him to be part of the squad for this Manchester Derby. Don't expect him to be starting in this game, in this huge game, in this absolutely huge game for Manchester United against Manchester City at Old Trafford. The opportunity to, some might say, Oasis, Man City. Some might say the opportunity to get right into a title race. For me, this is an opportunity to, keep getting the points while we can get the points. You know my stance, you can disagree with it, many do. I just think 3 games a week for 5 months, we are going to have a bad spell, and how long that bad spell is going to be, we don't know. We're in a good spell at the moment. When you're in a good sport, what's that saying? What's that saying? When you're making hay, make hay. No. While the sun's shining, make hay. And the sun is shining on Manchester United, and that is why we must make hay. Whether it's Man City, whether it's Forest at home, whoever. We're doing well at the moment. Let's go and get it. Now, I'll talk about my team in a minute, but we are playing Manchester City. It's Pep Guardiola. Ten Hag formerly was a Bayern Munich reserve team manager under Pep Guardiola all those years ago. There are similarities between what Ten Hag tries to do and what Pep Guardiola does. And Ten Hag will be desperate after the embarrassment of what happened at the Etihad back in the autumn. He will want to deliver credibility, progress, and I think we're you know what? On a positive, the first thing I would say, we are in the best position we could be with this set of players. I think there's loads more we can do as a football club, but I think if you said to me in August, how good could we be in January when we've got that home game against Man City, I don't think I could envisage a better situation. I mean, Rashford's playing brilliantly, Casemiro's playing brilliantly, Luke Shaw's playing brilliantly, the defence is playing brilliantly, Eriksen's settled in really well, Martial is fit, Antony is scoring goals, Bruno is a lot better than he has been for the last 18 months. That team, and Deleu's progression has been fantastic, Wan-Bissaka's stepped in and done well if we need him. I don't think this team could be in a much better position if we wanted it to be. So we're in a good place. And my new line is, if you've got Casemiro in the team, you've got a chance. You really have. So I think we're going into this game perfect, almost. I mean, we don't know what the injury status is going to be, but we're going into the situation almost perfect for what we can be. We're not perfection as a team. There's still work to do. But for what we've got, I don't think we can go into this game in a better position. You know the home support's going to be fantastic. You know the players are going to be up for it. Ten Hag's going to be up for it. So really, you go into a game without any excuse, which is what we want to do, and it's just a test. And I think that's the exciting thing. There is no excuse. There is no, we've got 4 or 5 key injuries. There is no, we're coming off a bad couple of results. We're going into this absolutely perfect in many ways for what we've got, and therefore we can sit back, watch that game intensely excited, but also where are we? And people will talk about City, and I've watched City's last few games, and I sense a vulnerability, which I'll talk about in a minute. I want to talk about how Ten Hag can win this, and I want to talk about the lineup, of course. But Man City, I watched them play against Chelsea in the league a week ago. They got the win, but I thought Chelsea, for large portions with a weakened team, did quite well. Obviously, the game last night against Southampton, that wasn't Man City. That was a very good reserves used, bench players used, but it's not their first team. But they're not. I don't think Man City are as good as they were last year. That's what I want to say. I said it in the summer, and I've said it numerous times when I've been on the Ben Foster football fill-in. I keep saying that Man City side has a vulnerability, and people wanted to say, can't wait for United to be slapped back to reality, says NAU. People want to say that Manchester City are going to run away with the title because they've got one of the best strikers in the world. I don't know who's been watching the members video. Quite a lot of you have watched it. It's basically comparing Weghorst deep dive into lots of different stats and comparing him to lots of strikers. Interesting thing about Erling Haaland, his defensive work rate is terrible, and his link-up play is terrible. Now, Weghorst isn't brilliant at the link-up play, but Haaland is worse. And Weghorst is one of the best defensive forwards in relation to pressures there is out there. Haaland, in some ways, weakens the Man City model. He doesn't really work hard from the front, and he doesn't really link up, and he doesn't get subbed. So if you can keep Haaland quiet, you keep Man City quiet. So, I mean, that's not easy to do necessarily, but he doesn't win many defensive duels. He doesn't do a lot of pressing, and he doesn't do a lot of link-up. So if you can keep him quiet, you keep Man City quiet. And I think that's a bit of a weakness. I think Man City have become a little bit too reliant on Erling Haaland this season, which is unlike Pep Guardiola. So they have a vulnerability, but they're still the favourites to win the league. They're still a very, very, very good team. But they do have a vulnerability, and I think that vulnerability is an over-reliance on Erling Haaland. City no longer play possession football, says ETH. Well, it's hard when you've got a player like Erling Haaland, but it's easy when you've got a player like Erling Haaland as well, because he's a fantastic player. Bernardo should be a worry, says Anonymous. Look, when we talk about Manchester City, they've got some fantastic players. I think I was looking at this earlier. I think I've still got the page up. So Manchester City, I like to look at this when we're playing anybody, the Premier League home and away table. I don't look at the Premier League table because that can be distorted. I look at the away table because we're playing an away team. What is Man City's record like away from home? What is our record like at home? Well, it's getting good. We're 5th in the league at home. Now, I know we're 3rd in the league overall, but our home record's not been that good for a few years now. Under Terry Ten Hag, I don't know why I call him that. Under Eric Ten Hag, it is a lot better. But we're playing Manchester City. Where are Manchester City in the away league table? Take a guess. They are in 2nd place. They're behind Arsenal. Arsenal have taken 22 points from 9 away league games. Manchester City have taken 17 points from 8 Premier League games. They're only a point better than us away from home, but our away record is pretty good. They've played 8 games. They've won 5. They've drawn 2, and they've lost 1. They've scored 14 goals, but they've only conceded 6. Newcastle, Arsenal, and Manchester City away from home have only conceded 6 goals. Every other team is in double figures. In fact, Brighton, who are in 4th place, have conceded nearly 10 more. Most teams have conceded nearly 10 more than Man City, Newcastle and Arsenal. So their defensive records of Arsenal, Man City and Newcastle are very, very, very good away from home. Which leads me to believe that I don't think... What's happened to Anthony Sassakin? I'm going to talk about that in a minute. That's my predicted lineup. Welcome to the Members Club, Callum. I don't think we're going to see the classic 4-3 Ben Foster in goal, Craig Bellamy 4-3, Michael Owen wins it at the end, Manchester derby that we saw all those years ago. But I think we'll see quite a low-scoring game. It's a Saturday lunchtime game, which I think tends to make it quite low-scoring. I don't know why. So I think it will be quite low-scoring. Man City defensively are reasonably good. We're reasonably good. You could almost predict a score draw, but I'm not going to predict a draw. I'm going to predict a Manchester United win, and I'm going to get that prediction in quite early. I think United will win. Looking at the lineup I've gone with here, there are a couple of people that I'm not so sure about. Now, Sean Walker says, Anthony presses well. Why is Eriksen there? Look, I think it's ridiculously hard to predict an Eric Ten Hag side at the moment, and I think that's a really good thing. So, De Gea will play in goal, we know that. Delot will play at right back if it was precautionary withdrawal. That sounds like something else I used to know. Anyway, so Delot at right back. If he's not fit, it will be Wan-Bissaka. You could play Luke Shaw at left-sided centre-back, and it wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea because Haaland is rapid, so is Luke Shaw. It might not be a bad idea to play Luke Shaw left-sided centre-back because Martinez, to me, doesn't look quite right after the World Cup. I think it's match fitness, but he doesn't, even the other night, he doesn't look quite right. The problem with that is, if you put Luke Shaw at left-sided centre-back with Varane, you might have your most in-form centre-back pairing at the moment. But then you've got to play Malacia at left-back, and Malacia against Mahrez or Bernardo Silva, I think, is dangerous. So I think he'll go Martinez and Luke Shaw, and I would agree with that. Casemiro holds the midfield and probably holds the destiny of the game in his hand, because if he wins that midfield battle, we will win the game. The midfield three is really interesting. I personally don't think you can play Casemiro, Eriksen and Bruno. And if he does, and we win, the guy is a genius. I don't think, and in fact I know, Eriksen's physical duels, tackles, interceptions is not very good. And Man City's midfield three is the best midfield three in the Premier League. Rodri, Gundogan, De Bruyne, work rate, passing, they are immense as a three. I think Casemiro is the best midfielder in the league this season. I can't believe that I hear people saying that Rodri and Partey are clear. I think that's just club bias. They're very, very good players, but Casemiro for me has been absolutely immense. So I think if we want to go games are won and lost in the midfield, we're the home team, and we don't want Man City to dominate the ball, and they dominate the ball through the midfield. So I think we've got to get into them in the midfield. Eriksen is only good if you've got the ball, and I don't think we'll have the ball if we play Eriksen, Casemiro and Bruno. So I would put Fred in there. Many of you have mentioned this. I think you've got to at least try that, because if we get it wrong, Man City won that game at the Etihad in the first few minutes. And we got dominated in the midfield. Now, Casemiro didn't play that game. I think it was McTominay and Eriksen, and they got annihilated. I think you've got to try and get a little bit of tenacity in there. So I would put Fred with Casemiro. I would then not drop Eriksen. I can't see him dropping Eriksen. So I think Eriksen would probably go to the 10 role. And I can't see Bruno not playing, so I could see Bruno going to the right, which means Anthony would miss out. I don't know whether that's the right thing to do. Logically, he'll probably play Casemiro, Eriksen, Bruno and Anthony. I would probably go for that. But I just think in a game of this magnitude, you don't want to be there when you've lost the game going, I think if I'd started Fred and been a little bit more aggressive in the midfield, we'd have got a result. So I think he's got to get it right. And I just have this feeling he might start Fred. Well done on the United Stand team in the studio. Loved it. Exactly what this game is. A barometer for United and actually a must-win almost for City. Pressure, says SK. Thank you, SK. Ten Hag is slowly turning Old Trafford into the fortress it once was. I think for the first time in 10 years, I believe United have a chance here, says CJ. And Mark, I suggest we play a diamond midfield with Eriksen, Fred, Casemiro and Bruno, but I might be stupid. I just can't see it, Adam. I can't see it. I know we used to see those things with Solskjaer, but this is Erik ten Hag. I don't see a back five or a diamond coming out like it used to under Ollie sometimes. This is a top level coach with a plan and a system. I don't think he will go. I don't think we'll see that. Welcome to the Members Club, Tyler. And then front three would obviously be Bruno to the right, Rashford to the left and Martial down the middle. Weghorst, I am convinced, will be on the bench. Joe says drop Eriksen for Fred. There are two uncertainties in that team. If Dalot doesn't play, it will be Wan-Bissaka. And I still feel that press conference tomorrow, we might get the dreaded Martial's not fit. There was a rumour he didn't train on Monday. Obviously, Ten Hag said he rested him on Tuesday. You just don't know. Ten Hag is very, very secretive about injuries. Like, we never knew when Dalot was going to be back, and we never knew how long he was going to be out for. We still don't know what the situation is with Donny. And, if Martial is injured, we might not know until, kick-off. So, we need Martial to be fit. I think Martial's very important in a game like this. And then you move on to how the game will be won and lost. Do you fancy Garnacho getting a chance? Sack it. I mean, look, I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think he will start. But I wouldn't rule it out. I don't think it's impossible. But how this game will be won and lost is very easy to read if you watch these teams. And obviously we watch Man United, and you should know Man City by now. Man City love to own the ball. Whether they're at Anfield or the Etihad or Old Trafford, they want to own the ball, they want to own the possession, that's what they're all about. And they will try and do that. And they will try and have 70% possession at Old Trafford, and they are capable of doing that. And what Ten Hag will do is try and bring that percentage down. He might have to concede that Man City, because of the way they play, will have 60%, but he won't want it up at 70%. He won't want to just be chasing the ball and then counter-attacking with 40-yard balls to try and get Rashford in behind, because you could spend 2 weeks doing that and it will never work, especially if you've got someone like Kyle Walker in their back line. So he will want the ball, and he will want to get the ball and make things happen with the ball, because one thing you can do to Man City is I don't think Man City are vulnerable to the counter-attack. I think Man City are vulnerable to a staggered counter-attack where you play through them and generate the space by moving the ball. We saw that when we played Liverpool back in August. So I think Ten Hag will want the ball, and he'll want us to be expressive on the ball, and he'll want us to move it quickly, but he won't want loads of 40, 50-yard balls trying to get Rashford in, because the only player in that team that's getting in behind is Rashford, and we can't just keep doing that. So I think that Ten Hag will be trying to bring down that possession of Manchester City, and when we get the ball, he'll be wanting us to express ourselves in a way where we have some possession as well. And I think the way we're going to do it is probably the way not a lot of teams would do it. I think he's going to trust his backline to push. Now, when you're playing against Erling Haaland, a lot of teams drop to the edge of their penalty box because they're terrified of the sprint. I think Ten Hag is going to push us. I think Ten Hag is going to push that team high, and I think Ten Hag is going to tell the front four to swamp and swarm Man City on the ball, because Man City strength, basically I think Ten Hag's going to try and turn Man City and Pep's strength into their weakness. I think that Ten Hag knows that Ederson will play out from the back, their back four will play out the back, Rodri will take the ball and play out, and I think he will try and swarm them, even though they're good at it. He will try and swarm them to make them make mistakes high up the pitch, because Man United, we're very good if we win the ball high up the pitch. We create chances, and I think that's what we're going to do. But to win the ball high up the pitch, you've got to be high up the pitch as a team. This is Old Trafford. This is 75,000 people. They'll be absolutely rocking, and I think Ten Hag is aware that he has built a relationship with the fans and a trust and a belief, and I think he will use it. I think he will. I might get it completely wrong. He might go for the old Solskjaer tactics. He might just go for let's sit deep and hit them on the break. But I don't think he will. I think he will go for it. I don't think it's called going for it. With our home team, we're Manchester United and we are very capable, like we were against Spurs, and Fred played in that game. That's the game I think he's going to try and replicate. Remember that game against Spurs? Fred was unbelievable. I think that's what we're going to try and do. And that's why I think Fred's very, very important, because you've got your front four pressing, but then you've also got Fred and Casemiro pressing, and I think he'll go for it. I think Eriksen is not capable of doing that sort of a job in this sort of a game. I personally think that Casemiro, Eriksen and Bruno in 75% of your games in a Premier League season will be absolutely fine, but I think there's 25% of games where you need a little bit more. I think when we go to the Emirates next week, I think when you go to the Etihad, when you play Liverpool, when you go to Stamford Bridge, when you play Man City at Old Trafford, there are a few games a season where I think you need a little bit more bite in the midfield, and I think this is it. And I might get it completely wrong. Pellistri and Garnacho should get game time as subs, as Simpson. To be honest with you, mate, I couldn't give a shit about subs. We're playing Manchester City. It's a massive game. It's a line in the sand. It's a barometer. It's many things. And who comes on as a sub with 20 minutes to go? I don't think Pep or Ten Hag will be thinking about that, because you can't have a plan. You can't have a plan. If you're winning 2-0, you might go to a back five and bring Harry Maguire on. If you're losing 1-0, you might just say to Garnacho, go out there and run at them and try and win us a game. So I don't think subs come into it really when we're talking about before the game. How do I think Pep Guardiola is going to approach this game? There was talk of a ridiculous tactic, to which he said he was joking, which I think many of us thought he probably was. Erling Haaland will start. He will play Rodri, Gundogan and De Bruyne, I think. He may play Bernardo Silva in there. Personally, I'm going to say this, because I described him as there's a song called Common People by Pulp, and I think it's massively underrated. And I said it's the Riyad Mahrez of the Britpop era, because I think Riyad Mahrez is absolutely underrated. I'd love him at Man United. I'd have loved him at Man United when he was at Leicester. I think he's so good. I think he's got such a good left foot. I think he's such a tricky player. I hope he's on the bench on Saturday. I hope that they do play Bernardo Silva, Foden and Haaland, because I think Mahrez is a fantastic player. And, they might go for a midfield three of Bernardo Silva, De Bruyne and Rodri, and then Mahrez off the left, off the right. I think that makes them stronger. So I'm hoping they're going to play Silva and Foden as the wide players with Haaland, and then Gundogan plays in the midfield. But I think Mahrez is a real risk. And I know Luke Shaw's playing really, really well at the moment, but there's a lot of work. I think when you play Manchester City, there's a lot of work to do. And what I mean by that is Varane and Martinez, you've got to keep an eye on Haaland. He's one of the best strikers in the world. Luke Shaw against Bernardo Silva or Mahrez, that's a task. Dalot against Foden, that's a task. And then that midfield three, Casemiro's brilliant, but that is a task to take on Gundogan, De Bruyne and Rodri. So, look, I think it's a very, very tough game. I think you can get it at Manchester City. And I'm going to go for a Man United win, and I'm actually going to go for something really surprising. I'm going to go for 6-0. No, I'm not. We need to be aggressive from the start. City won't want to deal with it, says Todd. You got to. Todd, you've got to pump it up. Hit it. You've got to pump it up. You've got to hit the game start from the start. I used to get so angry with previous Man United managers who in a big game, you go, if you've ever been to Old Trafford or you ever watch it on the TV or not, there was a period from, for about 20 years under Sir Alex Ferguson where you knew whoever it was, if we lit that touch paper, you could sense the crowd, whether you were there or not, was bubbling. And, you could see what Sir Alex Ferguson had said in the dressing room. Gary, overlap past Bex, Scholesy, get in the box. I don't care if you get on it, just whip a few crosses in and get this crowd up, corners, this, that and the other. And, you know, it's not like that crowd went away. It was always there to be utilised. But Mourinho, Van Gaal, Solskjaer, they just never really wanted to do it. And I think Ten Hag is more, you know, amenable to doing it. And that crowd is so important. We can't just go in the first 10 minutes against Man City and go, let's be tentative. Let's just not concede, because that allows Man City to settle into the arena and, you know, get a touch on the ball. Whereas if you actually go after them and, you know, get at them a bit, then, you know, you can unsettle them for the rest of the game. I think one of the interesting things for me is what's the weather going to be like, because I remember us playing Manchester City at Old Trafford under Solskjaer, and I think they won 2-0, but they were cruising. It was when we'd just been battered by Liverpool, and then we played Man City, and I think they beat us 2-0 overall, but it was chucking it down with rain, and we were trying to press them, and it was chucking it down with rain. It was really greasy, and Edison was just passing it around. Now, interestingly, at all morning in Manchester on Saturday, it's heavy rain all the way through until around 2 o'clock. So I think that plays into our hands as well. You know, not normally. I'm not Jurgen Klopp. I don't usually use the weather, but I'm telling you now, that is a gift from the gods. If it's chucking it down with rain at Old Trafford, it is a gift from the gods, because when you're a possession-based team, heavy rain makes your job harder. When you're a possession team away from home with a volatile crowd, a noisy crowd, and a team that wants to press you, I see this as an advantage. What are the chances of Weghorst getting some game time? I think there's a good chance he'll get some game time. I think he'll be announced as a Man United player late tonight or tomorrow morning. Would you take a draw, says Sean Turner? Previous years, I would have snapped your hand off. I fancy us this weekend. Got to start fast, and I can't believe I'm saying this. Fred needs to start. Well, I agree with everything you've said there, Sean. Thank you very much for the super chat. I will not take a draw before this game. Would you take a draw before this game? Let's do a poll. Well, no, we're not going to do a poll because it doesn't matter. But you know, that question gets asked a lot. If somebody offered you a point, would you take it now? No, I wouldn't, because I don't think we're going to win the league, and I don't think that this result on Saturday will dictate whether we're going to get top four or not. This is not about taking a point. This is about progress. This is more important to me. I don't care if we draw or win. I need to see, and I think Ten Hag needs to see progress. This is not really about, it is about the result, because the result is what matters in any game of football. But what's the point in saying, yeah, I'd take a crappy 0-0? What do we learn from that? We need to see that we can go head to head with Man City and worry them. And if we do that, we know there's progress to come. Surely there's more progress to come. Ten Hag's only been doing this for 6 months. So I think progress is more important than taking a point. A point might be a really good result. As I say, if we can take a point against Man City, beat Palace and beat Arsenal, I'll take 7 points from the next 9 and be ecstatic with it. But I think the important thing is to put in a performance that we can see as progression. Because I've had a couple of conversations with people this week, and they've said, you lose to Man City and Arsenal, and what have you done this season? You know, for all your progress, you beat a load of teams in the bottom 3, and then you've lost to decent teams. And there's an element of truth in that. I think there's an element of excitement in this fan base, and there's an element of belief. And I think we just need to see that progress. And as I said last night, you know, we could lose 4-3 in an absolute classic and still be very happy and say, what a game. With a couple more players in the summer, we'll be ready to have a right go at this lot. And look, we are. Let's not underestimate, or should I rephrase it? Let's not disrespect what we're playing. I know it's Man City and we want to beat them, and there's a rivalry, of course there is, but they're going for 3 Premier Leagues in a row. They've dominated the Premier League scene for the last decade. They've got an amazing squad, they've got an amazing manager, and they've got some amazing players, and they've got a system that they all know like the back of their hand. They are the definition of, you know, consistency at the very highest level. They're the best team in the league. So to go toe-to-toe with them and give them a game of football and worry them Would be huge progress, and I think that's what I'm looking at. I love Eriksen, but think he suits Saturday's need. Don't think he suits Saturday's needs. Need high intensity pressure, and Anthony's pressing is underrated and can't drop Bruno, says Joshua Bellwater. Look, if you're asking me to put my team out, I agree with what Joshua said. I would put Eriksen on the bench, I would put Bruno at 10, and I would put Anthony on the right. That would be my team. I'd pick that team, but I'd bench Eriksen and I'd put Bruno in the Eriksen position and Anthony on the right. But I just cannot, and he's capable of doing it, but I don't think for 1 minute that Ten Hag will drop Eriksen. And I think he's got to start Fred. I think Fred's got to start. I really think if we play Casemiro, Eriksen and Bruno and we lose, people will say we all knew that was a risky thing to do because Eriksen's not physical and Bruno's not physical. So you're leaving all the defensive work to Casemiro against the midfield that's physical and good on the ball. It's not enough. You've got to have a player like Fred in there. So I think the risk is if you go with Casemiro, Eriksen and Bruno and you lose, everyone's going to say, well, that was the thing that people have been talking about all week. But it's a big thing. I can't see Ten Hag leaving Eriksen out. I just think he sees him as too important to his team to do it. Next couple of games could definitely put us in a title race, which scares me. Where do you realistically think we'll finish? Says Callum. Callum, I don't know whether you're doing this on purpose, but you are going to get me in trouble, Callum, because I mean I get clipped up more than a porno, as we know. But the reality is, I say what I think at that moment in time, and you know you can criticize people who do that, but it's honest at that time. Sometimes it's absolutely dominated by passion of that moment, frustration, excitement, you know, sensationalist, whatever. But it's very difficult when you are discussing live and reacting to emotional things. So, you know, I got a lot of abuse yesterday because there was a clip of me which went out on the United Stand Twitter account. I can't argue. It went out on the United Stand Twitter account, and it was a clip of me saying, I don't think we'll get top four because I think we'll have a bad run, and I still think that we don't know whether these players can deal with a bad run. You know, there's still a mentality question mark for a lot of these players because we've seen over the years that when they get into a bad run and things go wrong, they don't do particularly well. I can't predict that when we have a bad run, it won't last long and Ten Hag will get them on a good run quickly because we haven't seen that yet. It's uncertain. And I also have been very consistent that I think we haven't got the squad to play 3 games a week for 5 months. So I don't think we'll get top 4. All of my heart wants us to get top 4. I mean, based on the video I did this afternoon about if we don't get top 4 financially, we could be in problems in the summer. It's another reason to be desperate that we do get top 4. And also, as well, everyone says you live up the arse of Ten Hag, you love him so much, you never say anything negative about him. Well, I haven't got anything negative to say, but I will say this, and maybe this will come back and be true. Hopefully it won't. But maybe Erik Ten Hag's a bit naive. You know, we don't know. And what I mean by that is, we all know we're playing 3 games a week for the next however many months. If Ten Hag thinks he can just keep going with the players that he's got like that, deep into loads of tournaments, and it all goes horribly wrong, some people will say, why did he not know what everyone knew? Why did he run the players into the ground? Now, we don't know that's going to happen, but what I'm saying is, it's so hard to predict. I personally don't think he will run people into the ground. I think we might get knocked out of a tournament because we have to play McFred and Magaluf in a game that's difficult because he can't simply play the same team 3 times a week. I think we play an FA Cup. If we beat Reading, I think we play the next round of the FA Cup 3 or 4 days before we go to Anfield. Well, if we pull out a decent team away in that round, I think he'd be forced to pick McTominay and Fred and Lindelof and Maguire, which obviously isn't our strongest team. So I think that, you know, a lot of people, like Samson says, we'll lose to Barcelona. Barcelona are a good team. So we don't, it's so hard to predict. What I will say is, just back on what Samson said there, if we get knocked out by Barcelona, I think we'll get top 4. I'm happy to say that. Because you're suddenly not playing Thursday to Sunday you're suddenly not having to play another 10 games. So I think if Barcelona knock us out, we'll get top four. Because the Carabao Cup's gone at the end of February, and if the Europa League's gone at the end of February, you've got Premier League games and the FA Cup between end of February and May. So that Barcelona game's huge. I want us to win, but I think if we got knocked out of that, I'd be more confident of top four. But my only reasoning for not getting top four is just the volume of games and the lack of depth in certain positions in the squad. But, you know, some people want to, you know, turn that into a negative. And we you know, I can't argue with people who have a different opinion to us or you or me. You know, it's all about opinion, and I implore that people do it in a fair way and, you know, contextually. But it's not always the way. You know, I've been sent stuff today, which is, you know, par for the course. I believe it was at the end of last season, and I was doing the player ratings with the player ratings things next to me, which I do on the match reaction. And I think I'd given Marcus Rashford a 3. I don't know what the game was, but I clicked the 3, and thousands of your aggregation score was 1.7. So it must have been a bad game for Rashford. Clearly it was a bad game if your aggregate score from thousands of you was 1.7. And I'd given him a 3, and I don't normally give that low. And I'd basically said, look, take the money from PSG and let him go. And that's now been clipped up 8 months later. And apparently I'm a disgrace because I said to sell Marcus Rashford. And I'm like, you know, I don't know what to say about people like that, because it's just, you are exposing yourself as thick, basically. You are taking something from probably last May or April and making it relevant in January. Marcus Rashford's brother went to Paris to discuss a deal. Not me, not anybody else. So at that time, when Rashford was playing badly, and he was strongly linked to Paris Saint-Germain for a reason, I think it was Samuel Luckhurst who put that story out, that Rashford's brother, his agent, had gone to Paris to talk about a deal. He's just had another bad game for Man United. I'm doing a match reaction straight after the game, and I say, you know what? I can't see Rashford turning this around. I think he needs a change. Take the money from PSG. I don't regret that. I'm not taking it back. I'm not taking it back. So if people think that by clipping that up and putting it up now, I want that to be deleted. The whole brilliance of what we've done over the last 7 years is it's a diary. It's a diary of changing times and changing opinions. That's the brilliance of life. I could take up tennis tomorrow and be really good in a year's time. I'm shit now. I'd hit the net more than a fish. So, look, things change. And you know what? I saw that clip today, and I actually was quite proud of it, because I was like, at that point, a player that I cannot stand it when people say Goldbridge called him Trashford. You know what I've said about that. I think it's a horrible thing to say, and I've always called it out. And Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial have always been two players that I massively liked because they're flair players. I've been harsh on Martial, I've been harsh on Bruno, I've been harsh on Rashford. They're all players I really, really like. And I'll say it as I see it. And there was a time at the end of last season where I thought Rashford was finished. You know, he'd been bad for so long. There's talk of PSG. And I'll admit there was a point where I just thought it's better for everyone if he goes. I really, really did. And you look at where he is now and you go, wow, I'm glad I said what I said, because that is an absolute example of how you can be at a point where people are thinking, even fans of you are thinking there's no way back and it's time to go somewhere else and start again. And now look at where we are. I think that example is an example that should be there. I think to go from, and look, you can all lie, but all these people who are now going, oh, look at the, you know, you're telling me at the end of last season they were going, yeah, let's give Rashford a new contract. They're all bloody hypocrites. They'd have been slagging him off down the pub like everybody else, and maybe justifiably. But it's that, you know, we've got a player in Jadon Sancho who's struggling. You know, Harry Maguire wants to play for the team. Wan-Bissaka. There are a few players at Man United who probably are getting written off. You look at what Marcus Rashford's done in less than a year. I think that having someone like that who's done that, and of course it's massively down to Ten Hag as well as Rashford, but I don't see a negative in that story. I don't see a negative that fans like me were saying, I can't see a way back. You know, he may as well go to PSG. I can't see a way back. I can't see it. Well, the way back was Ten Hag and hard work. And that, to me, is a brilliant life lesson. You can put that to anything. No matter how bad things look, no matter how much you feel down, defeated, whatever, you can use it for mental health, you can use it for work promotion, you can use it for friendships, you can use it for family, you can use it for anything. You can be in a position where, you know, there doesn't look like there is a way back. And then in less than a year, people are talking about you being one of the best players in Europe again, like they were 3 or 4 years ago. I think it's great because, and I'll say it again, at the end of last season, for a player I liked, I couldn't see a way back. And the reason I couldn't see a way back is because it wasn't 1 or 2 bad games. It was 18 months of, you know, deterioration. And he just didn't look good. And the fact that, you know, his agent or brother or whatever had gone to Paris, it looked like he was checking out as well. So at that time, it didn't look good. And where it is now, it's just amazing. So I hope people like Jadon Sancho do see that and realise that in 2 or 3 months, we might be looking back at Sancho not playing for 2 or 3 months, and suddenly he's like that. It's amazing. People who post out of context old clips are hilarious because they didn't realise there is a date of the video on the bottom left, says Matty Ross. I think people who post these clips are hilarious because apparently they don't like our content, and yet they are scouring our content from months ago. I mean, you know, thanks for the views. But, you know, they must be watching videos from April, May, June last year, studiously listening to try and find something where they can go, It is funny. But look, I implore it. I think it's... I saw the clip and I was actually very happy about it because I was like, bloody hell, it just shows you the improvement, the hard work and the turnaround. And that's a great lesson for anybody in any walk of life. Tyler, thank you for the super chat. The very fact that you're open to change your valid opinion at the time is better than someone trying to keep justifying their own opinion forever, says Aditya. Well, there are people out there like Luke Shaw. I've always been a big fan of Luke Shaw. I always think he's a good player. I can admit that last year he was terrible, but I've always been a big fan of Luke Shaw. I've always been a big fan of Marcus Rashford, but I'll say it if they're not playing well. But you do get people who just wouldn't listen about Luke Shaw. Now he's rubbish, he's overweight, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. And I'd be pulling my hair out because I'd be like, but he does do that. His energy and stamina is unbelievable. He's very good in the air for a fullback. His positional sense is good, of which he's proved by being able to play at left centre-back. But there was a few people out there, journalists, ex-players, other bloggers, who just would not have it stubbornly. That's the problem. Those people are the problem. The stubborn, the agendas, the people who have their favourites, who will not criticise the people they like and will not praise the people they don't like. Like, if Casemiro has a shit game on Saturday, I'll say it, even though I think the sun shines out his arse. You know, I will say it because it's not fair if you don't. Could he play McTominay just purely for height to cover Martinez, says Sean Turner, with Haaland? God, no, Sean. What are you thinking about? Bloody hell, I'd be terrified. We've got to go into the game confident, not scared. Go back another couple of years when you were saying Rashford was one of the best and everyone was reminding you of that tweet when he was bad, says Glenny Boy. Yeah, this is Glenny. It's so true. You cannot win. When Rashford was terrible last year, there was people taking a tweet from me about 2 years before where I said, in 2 years' time, Anthony Martial and Rashford will be the 2 best players in the league. So you can't win. You praise somebody and they're bad and you get clipped. You praise somebody, you criticise somebody when they're bad, and then when they play well again, you get clipped. It's par for the course, but, you know, I think if you watch the channel and you're part of the community, you know how it works. Should we forget Europa League, FA Cup, focus on top 4 and Carabao Cup? We are the only English team in 4. Well, we can't forget, Eric. I think naturally we will fall out of a couple of tournaments because we'll have to rotate. Just seen a quote from Jamie Carragher saying Weghorst is too tall for the league, says Raz. It's not true. It's not a true quote. It's someone trying to be funny, which is dangerous when you make a funny joke that people then take as serious. Just putting it out there, could Shaw play in place of Fred? Shaw, Bruno and Fred, so you can play Anthony and Malacia. Call me crazy. SK, I don't even know what you're on about. That's some crazy shit there. Put Shaw in the midfield. Not sure about that. pardon the pun. Anyway, look, I've got to go and do Chelsea versus Fulham. I'm going to have to really rush. I'm live on there for an 8 o'clock kickoff, so I'm going to really have to rush because I've got to do a couple of things first. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Really good conversation as always, as expected. Cannot wait for the Manchester derby. Obviously, we've got Ten Hag's press conference tomorrow to react to. We've got the morning show. I'm sure we'll be announcing Weghorst at some point. Saturday lunchtime, I can't wait. I've got my show back on Talk Sport on Saturday night as well. The Goldbridge call-in from 7:30 till 9 o'clock. Knowing it's going to be the fallout of whatever happens in that Manchester derby. It's just so exciting this weekend. North London derby on Sunday as well. I'll be doing that on That's Football. It's a massive weekend. So excited. But I'm going to go and watch João Felix's debut now. Not for Man United, for Chelsea. I'll push you over there and I'll speak to you over there. Don't forget, if you're a member, watch the video I put up today. It's for our members. We do exclusive extra content. I'd like to thank you for the support. Deep dive into Weghorst, comparing him to Haaland, Ivan Toney, Ronaldo and Martial. Defensive, passing, attacking, all the stats. Check it out on the members section. Thanks for your support. I'll see you on That's Football in about 10.